Update on Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, LGOIMA Improvement Plan. So perhaps if I invite the Chief Executive to report, although this wasn't a report that you received, it was certainly one that you took responsibility for upon your arrival, so I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So what I want to say quite simply is this. I know this arose out of the Ombudsman's report, but now we're in a position whereby actually this should be the norm that the Council receives. See, part of our DNA in being transparent and open on how we report. Hence why we are and continue to bring this on a quarterly basis. The second thing I would stress is that we are making good progress, but that does not mean we take our eye off the ball. You know that I hold a mirror up to the organisation in how we're performing, and I also do that to members as well in our debates, whether that's in private or in public. So I think Sean has clearly shown the progress we are making, and I think he can touch on some of the detail, but it is something that I expect to be part of our collective DNA, and that is what I'm projecting to the organisation. And I suggest, if you haven't already done so, you look at the video I put on my weekly newsletter that is back, because actually it talks about that in there as well. So the messaging remains the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to have a quick...
I can offer some main points of progress since January when we were last in front of Council. We've made good progress on a number of fronts on the Ombudsman's improvement plan. Key since January, we have instituted a training regime, which we have held a number of sessions with staff. One of the improvement plan key recommendations was that every staff member and elected member would receive LGOIMA training. This is progressing well, although as a result of the COVID-19 lockdown, we've had to slightly put that on hold. Now we can all reconvene in the same room. We're going to ramp that up and also hold training sessions for all elected members and go and visit the community boards as well. We've also made some good progress in replacing our spreadsheet system, which the Ombudsman saw some weakness. Working with our IT team to find a good solution which will provide a more robust and reportable mechanism. Probably one of the major developments also in the last 6 months is we have started reviewing PX documents of council, community boards and committees from the last triennium in particular, looking at reviewing them for release. And we've also made some solid progress in that. ELT have been behind all of these changes to date, and they have made it very clear this is a priority. There is an end date to complete the 600 PX papers from the last triennium by June 2021, but we're going to make that a priority and hopefully do it sooner. Generally, the improvement plan, the spreadsheet we provided, is up to date. We have highlighted a couple of sections throughout, usually as a result of the COVID-19 delays. It should be noted though that a number of the recommended actions are not just a simple point in time, and I reiterate the CE's words before that these are enduring. These will continue to be implemented and pushed throughout the organisation to ensure we meet the Ombudsman's expectations on our performance. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
That's good. Do I have any questions? Yanni?
Yeah, I did send through a question yesterday. I'm not sure if it got to you. And that was, it's really good to see the reviewing the reports that are released, and we've had an email with the ones that are released.
Yes.
What we don't know is which ones have been reviewed and not agreed to be released or had partial release.
Sure.
So I just wondered if there was a kind of a list that we could get circulated that showed, you know, what the status of each review was.
I don't want that circulated. I want it online. It's got to be public facing.
Yeah. I mean,
all of the information, you know. But I know that you're dealing with a backlog,
Yes.
and it's you know, in terms of priorities, then getting the information out there is the priority. But to say that circulating councillors with an email is a sufficient we want this front-facing as much online, and that's the same with all of the stuff that previously hadn't been released. Now we proactively release things like P-card expenditure, like travel expenses, the things that we know that people ask for constantly, were being asked for constantly before I became the mayor. They are now provided publicly, front-facing, on a proactive basis. The more we can do of that, the better. So a bit of mind reading in terms of what people might be interested in asking for, but as much as we possibly can to get it front-facing.
No, certainly, and that's the intention. The proactive release, we've come up with an initial list, but that's certainly a starting point. So we're looking at developing that online and sort of feeding it into and making it sort of inherent with the LGOIMA page. I'm happy to look at those PX documents. Just a note that if a document in PX, a report, is withheld, it is quite often withheld at that point in time. For example, there may be documents, reports that have not been released but may be able to be released in 12 months' time, depending on a timing issue or a contract issue and things like that. So when we say we review all reports, anything that is withheld will be reviewed at a later date, unless it's particularly sensitive or personal, when it might be withheld with no open date.
Right, but we can get that information, which would be really good, and we can put it on the website. The reports that get released, are they? Is there a specific page on the website where people can click on those reports now and see?
Yes, and they're fully named too, so the full title of the report's there as well.
Yeah, so no, that's great. And then just the second question was around the local governance statement. So when is that coming to us for approval?
I've forwarded that to governance staff. That's not really a LGOIMA issue in this aspect, but I'll get a response for you on that.
It kind of sets out with our community how we will operate at a governance level, and it does include a number of things around LGOIMA and stuff. So maybe that's a question for the Chief Executive. My understanding
somebody's very kindly whispering in my ear that it's actually on the website, so I'm not sure. Let me take that back and find out for you, Councillor Young.
Right, but it would come to us, I presume?
For sign-off.
For sign-off, so great, thanks. But cheers for the work that you're doing.
I'd quite like you to just reflect on, I mean, I don't like the phrase LGOIMA because it's confusing for people. It's a standard acronym that we all know that it stands for Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act. So we know what it means, but I think that what we're talking about is information that people are entitled to have. And the fact that they're conducted within meetings are required to be conducted in public unless there are certain grounds that would go against the presumption of it being in public. So the presumption is in public. The backstop provision is that if it for commercial sensitivity, all those reasons that are under the Act, they meet one of those criteria or more than one of those criteria, then the information can be withheld, and the meeting doesn't have to be held in public. So that's the overarching thing. I don't think that councillors fully appreciate that information that they give and send, that they receive and send, is official information, that they are holders of information. And I know that in the training that you're going to be doing, you'll be talking about this. But I've discouraged people from communicating with me on my private messenger, and I say to them, "This is breaching my obligations under the Act. I need you to email me." And my private email. This is for my private business. If you are contacting me through my private email, as the mayor, you must use my official email. You can't use a private email address. So, and that's because the information isn't mine at that point. It belongs as official information. So I really want to kind of emphasise this because I don't know that councillors fully appreciate this and whether you'll be covering this off in the training.
So very much. So we'll cover the context of what is official information, And basically it's any information a councillor might hold in their official capacity as councillor. So using personal email addresses can blur those lines somewhat. So it's, and also the security risk as well. I mean, from a security perspective. So it is important to emphasise that now, that any dealings, any information we hold in our official capacity is discoverable under the Act, which is underpinned by a principle of availability, which is, unless there is a good reason under the Act to withhold or refuse that, it is publicly available.
But the protection for councillors is that is all done through your office.
Yes.
Because you know, I think it's really important that when people receive requests for information, that they're not obliged to supply that information directly. They must give you the request and supply the information to you.
Any request for information to council is technically governed by the LGOIMA, and so that's not just our team, that's the customer services team, the media. So generally they'll respond themselves, and the only time it sort of comes to us formally is if there is a need to discuss it, or if there's a need, there are some sensitivities, but so we encourage staff, especially, pardon me, to respond if they can, quickly and openly. However, if there's a need to examine it further, or if there are some sensitivities, it should certainly come to us.
Personal email addresses and things like that you'd want to withhold.
Yes.
So it's the best advice is to take advice before you release information.
Very much. And so the only people who have the delegation to make a formal decision under the LGOIMA for council is the Chief Executive, the Head of Legal Services, and 2 of us in the Official Information team.
Yeah, good. Sarah.
Thank you, and it's good to see so much work happening in this space. I'm just 31A and B, which is the ensuring records are kept of workshops and briefings.
Yes.
I don't know, some of that's been happening, but identify those workshops and briefings that require formal records. Are there workshops, there's been a paper approved, I don't think I've seen that, and I couldn't see it in our memos kind of section, so it'd be really good to know which of our workshops have sort of records kept, and whether sometimes there's informal records, not just formal records, attendance, all of that kind of stuff.
Yes, no, we can provide an update on that.
Yeah, that would be really good, because it's just not clear from there what actually happens in those. And is there a space, I know that our community board, for example, has some discussions on whether informal meetings ahead of board meetings are allowable under the Act, those kind of things. Is there any information that we can get on those?
Yes, no, we can provide you with some info on those. I mean, generally, officially under the LGOIMA, any information is discoverable. Yeah. Whether it's in a public meeting or in a workshop or a briefing which isn't open to the public. So I mean, it's still discoverable, but certainly we can provide you with some guidance on sort of where they stack up. Certainly an open meeting or a closed meeting as such, or a briefing.
Yeah, or just informal meetings and those kind of things. That'd be great. Thanks.
No problem.
Very good. All right. Well, I'm happy to move the resolution. Do I have a seconder? Sarah Templeton. Any discussion? Put the motion. Oh, Jake.
Hey, look, I just really wanted to thank you and the rest of the staff for doing a great job and really stepping up in light of the Ombudsman's report. I still feel that we as governors kind of let you guys down in terms of being the champion of the spirit of openness and transparency, and that's really important that you see us genuinely committed to it. I think we should have a conversation, and I think Sarah's kind of opened it up a little bit by saying, let's discuss those informal pre-meetings. Let's discuss inviting the media to our workshops. I think in this organisation we still do late night releases of information to the media, which I don't think is very collegial. And issues like the Red Bus report are a clear example of where we could have done better. This is a report that's been communicated to hundreds of staff members, discussed in the media, and yet we have released no details of it, which I don't think is good enough.
Yanni?
Yeah, I think the points that Councillor Templeton and Councillor McClellan have made all point back to the local governance statement. That really is the expectation that we set at a governance level of how we will operate. And you may recall at the previous one of these quarterly reports, I've raised the issue of whether our workshops or briefings should be open to the public or the media. And, that's the local government statement as a document that would set out what levels of workshops, briefings and formals we would have and what the openness and transparency should be. And that's why I welcome us actually being able to look at that and agree to, have that discussion and agree to those principles that we think are important. And so I guess I am a little bit surprised it's been put online already without coming to us first, and particularly in light of the paper that's already been completed around the formal record keeping. And also just to see the minuting of identified workshops and briefings which we were told is initiated. Well, I would have hoped that would be pretty fundamental to be completed. I mean, I would have thought that should just be happening. So hopefully we can get some more information about what is actually going on there. So I welcome getting more information on this and looking at the opportunity for us to have a discussion at a governance level, because I do agree that we need to take responsibility at governance level for being open and transparent as well. Thank you.
Sarah and then Sam.
Please don't mistake my earlier couple of questions for being any more than what they were. And I don't like being drawn into stuff that's in a bit more detail. Actually, I'm quite comfortable with having our informal meetings. And so my questions were around making sure that was okay when some were uncomfortable with it. There are no decisions made. We might be, keeping some notes or something instead. But I'm quite comfortable with those, and I don't want to be drawn into accusations of lack of transparency when that's actually not happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
Thank you. I'll be pretty brief. I think we've probably been a wee bit too harsh on the organisation in the last 10 minutes, and a wee bit inappropriate in my view. I think this is a really good story in terms of actually what we've done proactively since the Ombudsman's report, and the fact we're reporting quarterly on the issues we've got, and I think what's been released is a really good thing. So let's not sort of get too carried away. I think you balance everything in the city with the best interests of the ratepayers, and sometimes we do need to protect commercial integrity, and there is a time and place to release information, but let's not get carried away with the fact that we need to do everything unnecessarily when it would compromise ratepayers' position. So I do think we're being a wee bit harsh on the great work of Sean, Dawn and the team, and I think collectively we have a responsibility to actually be responsible and not sort of jump at a headline.
Yeah, I'll just close off the debate because, I agree with what Sam has just said. I think the organisation has stepped up amazingly in light of the, what was a damning report. And you might recall that one of the features of that report was actually the resident survey, and how different the release of the resident survey was this year, just a couple of weeks ago, compared to what it was that actually led to a significant number of people, both within the organisation and outside the organisation, saying that we were trying to cover up for what was an appalling result. The result set aside, it was all put out there. It was provided in great detail, and the organisation has taken responsibility for addressing the underlying concerns that sit behind many of the features of the resident survey, and I have every confidence that we will get there. When I first arrived as the Mayor of the city, I was appalled at the lack of transparency in terms of information that was not publicly put online as a matter of course. The P-card expenditure was something that was hidden from view. The media had to ask for it. Ministers' credit card expenditure was being asked for at the same time. So it was an issue I was very aware of when I became the Mayor, and it was something that I asked to have all put out in the public arena on a regular basis. The same with travel expenses. I mean, just all of the different elements that often stand in the way of the big issues. And I really do resent the comments about Red Bus. It's not just about the holder of information, it's also about who holds the information and who appropriately should communicate with the staff of an organisation. And in the Red Bus case, it was made crystal clear that there was more than one option that was facing Red Bus, and it was handled in a way that was as sensitive as it could be under the circumstances. But it wasn't our role to have a public discussion about the features of the circumstances that have led to a range of options being made available. So we make the decisions that we make. We make as many of them in the public arena as we possibly can. We have very strict rules. Since the new chief executive has arrived, that it has been very deliberate, each decision about whether the paper stays on PX or not. I recall the very first meeting with the chief executive on an agenda setting meeting. There was an item proposed for PX, and she said, does this have to be? Do we really want our first paper together to be a PX item on the agenda? And we agreed that it didn't have to be. So we are being challenged all the time, and I think that every single councillor around this table is absolutely committed to openness and transparency, but we're not committed to a headline that doesn't describe the nuance and the complexity of what are very challenging decisions. And sometimes we disagree with each other. And sometimes having an informal discussion beforehand enables us to put all the questions on the table and to actually look at where the issues are, so that we come here to debate the issues instead of asking a lot of questions that are not relevant to the issue in front of us, but actually debating the issues. I love debates when we disagree. I loved the annual plan debate. We disagreed with each other, but I didn't care because it was a good quality debate, and that's what the public expect to see from us. So I am all for holding more workshops with our public, and I intend to do that with the district plan. We have to make changes to our district plan, and I intend to invite our residents' associations into the room so we can have serious discussions about what is possible. But in every informal setting, I need to know, whether people want to focus on particular issues over other issues. That helps me run the meeting, and I think the meetings run better when we actually do informally discuss the issues that are important to us, and they then get prioritised for the meeting itself. So on that note, I shall put the motion and thank staff as well. And all those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.